The next item of business is topical questions. In order to get in many people in as possible, I prefer short, succinct questions. I live in hope, and answers to match. Question 1, John Mason, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government, in light of recent sectarian violence, what action it proposes to prevent disorder at future marches.
Cabinet Secretary, Mr Husef.
Firstly, I want to commend Police Scotland for the robust operation that they delivered on Saturday in extremely difficult and challenging circumstances. I'm sure that I speak for everyone in this chamber in wishing the officer who was injured by a pyrotechnic a speedy recovery. The police have my full backing in identifying and prosecuting the irresponsible individual who threw the dangerous device. The events of the last 2 weekends have clearly demonstrated that sectarian violence is not a thing of the past. What we have seen is the perfectly legal right to parade peacefully and counter-demonstrate, which are both important elements of a democracy that values free speech, being abused by those who are intent on denying others a voice so that they can indulge in violent, disorderly and offensive behaviour. The right to free expression does not give you the right to intimidate communities. I think I can safely say that the vast majority of citizens of Glasgow view the sectarian violence stemming from these marches as a stain on the city's reputation. That's why I've been working with Glasgow City Council and Police Scotland to find a way forward that will prevent the scenes that we've seen recently from happening again. There is no simple solution, and all the options, including legislative options, are very much firmly on the table. The Council are determined to reduce the number of marches. I support them in that aim. I also remain committed to tackling sectarianism and bigotry. We'll continue to invest in education work, build on our unprecedented investment of 14 million since 2012. We must work together to eradicate sectarian violence once and for all, and of course open to considering all proposals from across the chamber.
John Mason.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. He mentions the Council's desire to reduce the number of marches, and as he may know, there are 14 planned for the rest of this month, which I understand to be 1 Republican, 2 other subjects altogether, and perhaps the rest are all orange or orange related. Does he think the Council has the power at the moment to reduce the number of marches, or would that need some change?
Cabinet Secretary.
It's a very helpful question from John Mason, and that was the focus of our conversation on Thursday. Where the Council feel that they have the legislative powers, they will use them, they will act upon them. Where they don't feel they have the legislative powers, I told them that certainly from the government's point of view, and I think this Parliament should be very open to that conversation. But it does frustrate me somewhat, well, quite a lot, frankly, that we're having to talk about legislation for disorder that is committed by grown men here in 2019 in a multicultural city like Glasgow when they're fighting battles of centuries gone by. I just think for the fact that we have to think about legislating to stop these individuals from committing that disorder is a pretty depressing state. But yes, to give John Mason the assurance where the Council feel that there's a need for further legislative options to be explored, I've given them an undertaking to do that.
3 members wanting supplementary. Short questions, please. It would be Adam Tompkins, followed by Anna Sarwar, followed by James Kelly. Mr Tompkins.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I agree with everything that the Cabinet Secretary has said in his response to the questions from John Mason. As I understand it, Presiding Officer, Glasgow City Council is reviewing the procedures by which it permits marches in our city, and I very much welcome this. What practical support is the Scottish Government offering Glasgow City Council in this regard?
Before you answer, Cabinet Secretary, I realise, Mr Mason, you had another question. I'll let you have one at the very end. Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you. Can I thank Adam Tompkins for the question and the tone in which he asks it. We have said to the Glasgow City Council that we'll help in any way that we can with the review. Adam Tompkins makes a really important point here. Legislation is one way that the government can assist. We can help assist in many other ways. We're currently looking at and exploring, for example, is there a role that the government can play in relation to mediation? Can we help to fund that? Can we do some development work in terms of the various sides of the parties coming together to have a conversation if we can get an agreed rationale for reducing the number of marches? So that is one way that the government can give some practical support. What I'd say to Mr Tompkins is, if there is a request from the Council for anything further the government can do, I can give him an absolute assurance that the leader of Glasgow City Council is knocking at a very open door.
Anna Sarwar, followed by James Kelly, followed by John Mason.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the Minister agree that the events in Glasgow left many feeling we're going backwards, becoming less tolerant and more divided? and that there's no place for hatred on our streets, no matter where it's coming from or who it's directed towards. We need to bring people together and ask people to reach out across divides. Will the Minister therefore encourage Glasgow City Council to reinstate the previously established stakeholders group?
Cabinet Secretary.
Again, can I thank Anna Sarwar for the question? Again, the nature in which she asked it. I think anybody in this chamber would recognise the work that Anna Sarwar has personally done in terms of bridging that divide between communities where there can often be tension and, of course, in eradicating hate. So I would like to make sure I recognise that on the record. In relation to his substantive point around Glasgow City Council, I'm going to leave it to Glasgow City Council to come up with what they think the solutions are. I know many people have their own views on that, and I think we should consider the proposals that Anas has mentioned. Indeed, if any proposals come from across the chamber, certainly from a government point of view, we'll be open-minded to that. I think the City Council should be open-minded to listening to ideas from across this political spectrum, because he's absolutely right. I mean, it was my constituents that were affected a week past Friday in Govan. They told me that they felt that they weren't safe to go outside their house. That is not an acceptable position in 2019. So we all have a collective desire, a collective need and a collective interest to try to eradicate this kind of hatred from our streets. But frankly speaking, the citizens of Glasgow that I speak to have just had enough. They have had a tolerance for these type of marches for many a year and have just had enough. So when it comes to Glasgow City Council's desire to reduce the number of marches, I think that's a pretty decent place to start, and certainly they'll get support of the government in that endeavour.
James Kelly, followed by John Mason.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. In all this, there's a balance to be struck between promoting and protecting freedom of speech and ensuring that local communities don't have their day-to-day lives disrupted. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if consideration's been given to consolidating the number of marches, such as if one organisation has a number of applications over a calendar period, they are merged into one or a number of marches in order to reduce the number of marches taking place and therefore minimise disruption to local areas?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I thank James Kelly for the suggestions? Again, in the vein that I've answered the other questions, I think we should look at all of these proposals. I can give James Kelly an absolute assurance that this was part of the discussion that we had with Glasgow City Council. Can they rationalise the number of marches and therefore reduce the number of marches taking place? The challenge for this is that each of the applications often come in from different organisations. So, you know, the Apprentice Boys of Derry will be a very different organisation to the main Orange Order March that takes place, for example, on the 12th or around about the 12th of July. So, although they may well be grouped under the umbrella of loyalist parades, they will be each individual organisation making individual applications. That's where Adam Tompkins' point and suggestion, which we'll take forward around perhaps engaging with these groups, perhaps mediating between these groups, might be one strand that we should explore, but certainly it's a suggestion that we should take forward.
John Mason.
Thank you very much again, Presiding Officer. I wonder if the Cabinet Secretary feels it would be helpful if we had a really united front within the Parliament and between spokespersons from all the different parties in order to take this forward, because it is quite a sensitive issue.
Cabinet Secretary.
Yes, I think we shouldn't, and if this topical question has demonstrated anything, we have the ability to have a very mature discussion across the chamber about these issues, about the fact that we all want to see, I think, relatively, want to see a reduction, I should say, sorry, in the number of these marches, while of course protecting freedom of speech and the freedom of the right to assemble. So it was an oversight by me not to welcome James Kelly, I should have said, to his Justice role, but perhaps his suggestion I should take up and invite the Justice spokespeople to a conversation across the chamber to how we might assist local authorities in dealing with this problem, which involves potentially legislation, but might potentially involve other measures as well. So I'll take that suggestion forward.
Thank you. Question 2, Mike Rumble.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it can confirm how much Prestwick Airport has received from the US military for its operations.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Matheson. Cabinet Secretary, your card, microphone. I'm not in charge of microphones. Can you... There it is. It went on.
Okay.
That's it. Off you go.
Presiding Officer, Glasgow Prestwick Airport operates at arm's length from the Scottish Government. Information on individual revenue streams is available in the annual accounts, which are available online and laid in Parliament. To protect the commercial interests of the business, information on revenue is not broken down by individual customer in published accounts. In relation to recent media reports, it's important to make clear that Prestwick, like all other airports providing fixed-based operations, arranges overnight accommodation for aircrew when asked to do so. It uses a list of 13 hotels, some of which pay Prestwick commission. Turnberry is generally booked only if other airports are unavailable, or if hotels are unavailable, or if customers specifically request it. There is no commercial relationship between Prestwick and Turnberry. Prestwick does not benefit from commission or in any other way from booking Turnberry, and customers settle their own accounts directly with the hotel.
Mike Rumbles.
Well, it seems we'll just have to wait for the American inquiry to find out the actual figures. But can the Cabinet Secretary confirm reports that this income stream is the largest single income stream Prestwick Airport relies on? And if it does, if he knows that, does he really think this makes Prestwick Airport a viable economic proposition? Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Presiding Officer, the member will recognise the important role that Prestwick Airport has to the Ayrshire economy and to the aviation industry, which is clustered around Prestwick Airport, which was part of the reason why the Scottish Government stepped in to purchase the airport at the time. It's also an airport which, for historical reasons, for many decades, I think since the 1930s, has actually been utilised by military for stopovers and also for refuelling. That was the case when it was in the private sector and remains the case when it's within the public sector. It's an area where there has been an increase in growth within the work that Glasgow Airport and Glasgow Prestwick Airport undertake, where there has been a growth in the revenue which is received from refuelling and from restovers, and that's a reflection of the proactive work which the management team at Prestwick Airport have been undertaking in order to reduce the losses of the airport and to make it more commercially viable.
Mike Rumbles.
But just when does the Cabinet Secretary believe that we will receive back any of the £40 million of loans of taxpayers' money that the government has so far given to Prestwick Airport, considering the airport still hasn't made a profit in over a decade? Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Presiding Officer, if the Scottish Government had not provided this financial assistance to the airport, the likelihood is that the airport would have closed. And the hundreds of jobs which are directly associated with the airport and the over 1,000 jobs which are associated next to the airport would have been put in jeopardy. By the actions which we have taken, we've actually saw Chevron operate a new base from the airport, and alongside that we've also saw Ryanair introduce their overhaul and maintenance facility at Prestwick as well, providing hundreds of very highly skilled jobs as well. The member will be aware that we advertised back in June for interested parties in purchasing Prestwick. That process is being taken forward, and anything in relation to any final decisions on the future of Prestwick will be dependent on the bids which are received for the airport, and any actions which we take will be in the best interests of the Scottish taxpayer.
Thank you. I have 3 members wanting to ask questions. It's an important questions, but I would like short questions, please. Colin Smith, followed by Patrick Harvey, followed by Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The sale documents for Prestwick suggested that a preferred bidder would be selected by the 6th of September and a sale completed by the 4th of October. Can the Cabinet Secretary say if any bids have indeed been received for Prestwick Airport? Has a preferred bidder been selected? Is the 4th of October still realistic? And does he think the revelations on the heavy reliance on income from the American military is likely to impact on that sale?
Multiple questions, but cleverly done.
Officer,
Cabinet Secretary.
Good progress has been made as it stands at the present time. The management team are obviously assessing the bids which they have received. I'm not going to go into any more details in relation to them, given the commercially sensitive nature of them, and it would be inappropriate for me to do so. But the management team at Prestwick advised me that they are making good progress with that, and they intend to continue to work to the timescales as best they can. However, there is always a need to take into account any unforeseen matters that may arise during considering these issues. The member will also be aware that the issue around military operations and the use of Press Week is a long-standing arrangement which Press Week has been used for, and anyone interested in purchasing Press Week would be aware of the history of that, which is a long-standing base which has been used for rest breaks and also for refuelling of military aircraft.
Patrick Harvey, followed by Brian Whittle.
The relationship between Prestwick and the US military is indeed long-standing, and so is the concern about that relationship, including complicity with extraordinary rendition and active military missions, which the Scottish Government has said that it opposes. But is it not now clear that we also risk having Scotland's good international name dragged into a corruption allegation against a far-right US president? We can't afford that reputational risk. Should we not now at least suspend the relationship with the US military until the congressional investigation has concluded?
Cabinet Secretary.
Officer, these matters have been explored in this chamber before, and the member has made his views known in relation to the use of Prestwick Airport for military refuelling and for rest breaks and stopovers. And I don't see any benefit in rehearsing them again. In relation to the member's specific point about ending this relationship to allow any congressional investigation to take place, it's entirely a matter for Congress and the US authorities to conduct any investigation that they see appropriate. However, the arrangement which, as I've already outlined, that Prestwick Airport have in place is to arrange accommodation as and when it's requested, and that they have 13 different hotels which they use in the local area to provide that facility as and when it is necessary.
And Brian Whittle.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I think Prestwick has always had unique qualities in its long runway, and believe it or not, weather. It's very rarely fogged in. 5-year-old, I watched Concorde's inaugural training flights there. I've run along the beach, I've seen F-18s refuelling on their way to the Gulf. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary what the Scottish Government is doing in its negotiations to ensure that the strategic uniqueness of Prestwick is maintained by the potential new owners?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member will be aware that the airport operates arm's length to the Scottish Government for reasons to make sure we comply with European state aid rules. Therefore, the Scottish Government is not directly involved in any contractual discussions relating to the airport itself. But by the very fact that we stepped in to purchase the airport, recognising its strategic importance, both as an airfield and an aviation facility, and also in continuing to support it in looking to diversify the business, is a reflection of the value that we see that it has, not just to the Ayrshire economy, but to the national economy of Scotland as a whole. The member also may want to reflect upon the details that were set out in the eligibility questionnaire, which were associated with the advertising of Glasgow Prestwick Airport for interested parties, which sets out very clearly our intentions that anyone who is bidding for the airport, that we expect it to be maintained as an active airfield and to build upon the progress that's been made in recent years by the management team at Glasgow Prestwick Airport.
Thank you. That concludes topical questions. It's time to move on to the next item of business. A short pause while the front bench take their places.